All right, so are you ready for this one? Newspaper clippings from 1854. I mean, talk about a time capsule, right?
It really is, yeah.
We're diving deep into, maritime history, obviously.
Yeah.
Some Arctic exploration, and even, like, a peek into daily life way back then, so...
It's amazing the range of stuff we've got.
Yeah.
I mean, from that whole chilling mystery of Sir John Franklin's lost expedition
Right.
to, like, those early rumblings about, well, slavery and, the politics of the day.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much here.
There's a lot to unpack.
So let's start with Franklin.
Okay.
I mean, everyone loves a good mystery, really, right? And his ships, they vanished in the Arctic back in 1845.
Right.
Searching for that Northwest Passage.
Yeah.
And then all these years later, well, actually, the Inuit people reported seeing some pretty grim things.
Yeah, around 40 white men they saw.
Oh, wow.
Struggling southward across the ice, hauling boats with them. And then, by 1850, the awful truth started emerging.
Yeah.
Scattered bodies. Some were buried. Some were in these, like, makeshift tents.
Oh, geez.
Others huddled under an overturned boat, looking for shelter.
It's just a scene out of a nightmare.
It really is.
And the details they found are so vivid.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like, they found one officer, and he still had his telescope strapped to his shoulder.
Wow.
And his gun was just lying right there. Plus, there were all these tons of emptied gunpowder.
Yeah.
So they definitely weren't short on ammo, that's for sure.
No, they weren't.
So what do you think went wrong?
Well, that's where things take an even more disturbing turn.
Oh, no.
The state of the bodies and, combined with what they found in their cooking pots, leads to one horrifying conclusion.
Okay.
They resorted to cannibalism.
Oh, my God.
To try and survive.
Wow. Just thinking about the sheer brutality of the Arctic.
Right.
And the choices that they had to make.
They're desperate choices.
Makes me appreciate a warm office, that's for sure. But, okay, beyond just, like, the horror of it all, there's the mystery still. What actually caused this to happen?
Right, and that's what makes the relics they found so fascinating. You've got silverware, watch pieces, compasses, guns, all sent back to London.
Wow.
Each one just this little clue frozen in time.
Imagine the stories they could tell.
I know. If only they could talk, all right.
Okay, so that's this terrifying tale of survival in the Arctic.
Right.
But it got me thinking, like, what was everyday life like for sailors back then? Even when they weren't, facing down polar bears and starvation.
Right. Well, luckily we've got this letter
Okay.
that absolutely rips into American merchant seamen.
Oh, wow.
This guy pulls absolutely no punches.
Okay.
Calls them unskilled, rowdy, just basically pushed to their limits by awful conditions.
No glamorous, romanticized life at sea then, huh?
No, not at all.
What was he so upset about?
Well, he paints a really grim picture. Harsh discipline, measly pay, and just, like, a total lack of respect for sailors from those in charge.
Yeah.
He even says American ships, they're stuck hiring anyone they can get.
Oh, well.
Because experienced sailors just won't put up with the abuse anymore.
Wow. That's a pretty harsh indictment of the whole system.
It is?
Does he, like, offer any solutions? Or is he just kind of ranting?
Well, he doesn't lay out a specific plan or anything, but the implication is clear, you know? Something needed to change.
Yeah.
And, what's interesting is we have another source that kind of echoes this concern about the mistreatment.
Okay.
It's that really disturbing account of this abused cabin boy.
Oh, right. Yeah, this is where it gets really hard to stomach.
Yeah.
This kid, I mean, he went through whippings, beatings, even got locked up in the cargo hold. It's just brutal.
Awful, awful.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess we have to understand the power structure on these ships, right?
Right. I mean, the captain was basically king with very little oversight or accountability, So
abuse was probably pretty common.
Oh, all too common. Yeah.
Okay, wait a minute. So we've got this letter complaining about the terrible conditions and then this horrific story of this kid getting abused.
Right.
Do you think there's, like, a connection there?
Absolutely. I think it suggests that this wasn't just, like, a few bad apples, but, like, a systemic issue.
Oh, okay.
The maritime industry, at least how it's described in these sources, seems like it was just built on exploitation and a culture of fear.
Man, that makes the Franklin expedition seem even more tragic.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they were fighting for survival even before they set sail.
It adds a whole other layer to their story, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if those harsh conditions, the lack of respect, if that contributed to some of the bad decisions that ultimately sealed their fate.
Okay, so before we get too depressed here,
Yeah.
let's switch gears.
Yeah.
Because amongst all this, like darkness.
Right.
We also have Madame Pfeiffer.
Oh, yeah. What a legend. Seriously, what a legend.
She's like the polar opposite of everything we've been talking about.
Right.
Imagine this. Traveling solo
Yeah.
through Sumatra
In the 1850s?
in the 1850s, yeah.
Wow.
Climbing volcanoes.
And living among tribes rumored to be cannibals?
I know. Can you imagine?
This woman was fearless. I mean, especially, like, this was a time when women were expected to just stay home and, like, embroider doilies or something.
Right.
And she's out there charting her own course. Literally.
Exactly. She wasn't just an adventurer, though.
Oh, yeah.
She was meticulously documenting her observations,
Okay.
collecting plant and animal specimens, contributing to scientific understanding.
Wow, talk about breaking stereotypes.
Right.
I mean, her story is like a breath of fresh air after all that doom and gloom at sea.
Yeah, it really is.
But it does make you wonder, like, were there many women like her back then? Or was she, like, a total anomaly?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And one we could definitely dig into more, you know?
Yeah.
It speaks to that larger issue of, like, women's roles
Right.
and how they were viewed and restricted back then.
Okay, but before we totally get sidetracked, let's bring it back to 1854 for a second.
Okay.
Along with these, like, epic tales of exploration and hardship and everything,
Mm-hmm.
we've also got these, like, little snippets of daily life
Oh, yeah.
from New York City.
It's like flipping through someone's old diary.
I know.
You get the price of Malaga fruit at auction
No.
or a fire at a chair factory on 8th Avenue.
Right. It's not all about, like, the big events, you know?
Right.
It's about how people lived, what they worried about, what they ate, you know? It's like time travel, but with newspapers instead of a DeLorean.
Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of big events, we can't ignore the, like, political storm brewing over slavery.
Right, yeah.
Remember that letter from Jay Blunt,
Oh, yeah.
the chairman of the Auburn Convention?
Right.
He was absolutely fuming about the repeal of the Missouri Compromise.
Yeah.
To be honest, I need a little refresher on what that even was.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Sounds like a big deal, but why? So imagine a country that's already divided over slavery.
Mm-hmm.
In 1820, they came up with this compromise.
Okay.
Slavery would be banned in new territories north of a certain line, except for Missouri.
Okay.
It was meant to keep things balanced, prevent one side from getting too much power.
But then they just ripped that agreement up in 1854.
Yeah.
No wonder this guy was furious.
Well, yeah.
What was, like, the fallout from that?
Well, simply put, it poured gasoline on an already smoldering fire.
Oh, jeez.
It opened up huge areas to potential slavery.
Yeah.
It enraged the abolitionist movement and
Right.
just basically pushed the North and South further apart.
Yeah, I mean, Blunt's letter is a really powerful example of that outrage, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He calls it a gross violation of faith
Yeah.
and accuses Southern politicians of straight-up betrayal.
You can just feel the tension, right?
Yeah, totally. And it's important to remember, this wasn't just about politics. You know?
Well, absolutely.
It was about people's lives.
Right.
Their freedom.
Yeah.
Their very humanity.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, so we've got Arctic adventures gone wrong,
Uh-huh.
a maritime industry in desperate need of a makeover,
Yeah.
a fearless female explorer shaking things up,
Mm-hmm.
and a nation on the brink of tearing itself apart over slavery.
Right.
And this is just part one.
I know, it's a lot.
What else does 1854 have in store for us?
Well, we'll have to see next time.
I can't wait.
Me neither. Well, amidst all this political drama and all the maritime troubles, everyday life in New York City kept chugging along.
Mm-hmm.
We got a snippet here about a ceremony for laying a cornerstone
Okay.
of a new church in Washington, D.C.
A church cornerstone, huh?
Ah.
That seems like a pretty big deal for folks back then.
It was a big deal. I mean, we're talking like Bishop Simpson giving a speech,
Wow.
the head of the Masonic order doing his thing, the whole 9 yards, you know?
Yeah.
Imagine like all these people dressed in their finest, you know,
Yeah.
celebrating something new and hopeful while all this political turmoil is going on around them.
Yeah, it really highlights how even in times of like uncertainty,
Mm-hmm.
people still find comfort and meaning in their faith.
Exactly, like this little pocket of stability, you know,
Yeah.
amidst all the chaos.
And speaking of finding ways to cope with stress,
Right.
you also sent in an article about a bunch of musicians who decided to like serenade Governor Seymour
Oh, yeah.
in New York.
Yeah.
Now that's what I call campaigning.
Right.
Maybe a little less arguing and a little more music, would do our politicians some good today, don't you think?
Maybe. But seriously, it's just a reminder that even in the midst of all that political wrangling, people still found time for joy and celebrations.
Like a breath of fresh air, after all that heavy stuff. And speaking of, like, everyday events, there's also this report about another fire.
Oh, right.
This time at a chair factory on 8th Avenue.
Right. 1854, a bad year for fires, it seems.
Yeah, maybe.
But, fire safety back then was a totally different story. Buildings were mostly made of wood, and, like, firefighting techniques were pretty basic.
So between fires and shipwrecks and, potential financial scams and stuff,
right,
it's safe to say that life in 1854 wasn't exactly a walk in the park.
No.
It's easy to romanticize the past, but sometimes we forget how tough it really was.
It's true.
And speaking of tough times,
remember
that letter criticizing American sailors?
Oh, yeah.
The one that claimed they were all, like, unskilled troublemakers?
Well, turns out there's another side to that story.
Really?
Yeah. You also included an account from a ship captain.
Okay.
Captain Tracy.
Okay.
And he actually argues that sailors were generally treated well and with respect.
Wait, hold up. That's completely different from what that letter writer was saying. So who's telling the truth?
Well, that's the beauty of history. Multiple perspectives.
Yeah.
Captain Tracy paints this picture of shipmasters being, like, kind and noble men who genuinely care for their crews.
It's like we're getting two completely different versions of reality.
It is, right.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Maybe there were good captains and bad captains, just like in any profession.
Right. It's never as simple as black and white.
Nope.
So what else can we learn about, like, sailors' lives back then?
Well, we have some firsthand accounts from sailors themselves.
Oh, cool.
Describing their experiences, both good and bad. Yeah. It's like hearing their voices echo across time.
I love those personal stories.
Me too.
They really bring history to life.
They do.
So these accounts, what do they tell us?
Well, they offer some incredible details about what it was really like.
Yeah.
The working conditions, the pay, the discipline, even, like, the social hierarchy on board.
So we can use these stories to paint a more accurate and nuanced picture of what it meant to be a sailor in the 1850s.
Precisely, yeah.
Okay.
And you know what else is fascinating?
What's that?
These accounts, they revealed this, like, incredible bond. Oh, wow.
Between sailors.
Okay.
They faced danger together.
Yeah.
They relied on each other for survival, and it really forged this deep sense of camaraderie.
Like a brotherhood of the sea.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It transcended, like, national boundaries and cultural differences.
Wow.
Sailors from all over the world found common ground in their shared profession and, the challenges they face.
It reminds us that even in a world that's, like, often divided by borders and beliefs, there are still these fundamental human experiences that connect us all.
Absolutely. And while we've been focused on life at sea, we need to circle back to those relics from the Franklin expedition for a second.
Okay.
Remember they found all that stuff with the bodies? Silverware, compasses, guns.
Right.
Whatever happened to all of it?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Did it end up in, like, a museum somewhere?
Well, according to these newspaper clippings, a detailed list of the most important relics, along with sketches of the others, were sent back to London for further study. Wow, it's like holding a piece of history in your hands, trying to, like, decode the secrets they hold.
Right, and those relics weren't just, like, curiosities. They were crucial pieces of evidence in the puzzle of what happened to the expedition.
Right.
For example, those heaps of emptied gunpowder tells us they didn't simply run out of ammunition.
So that eliminates one possible explanation, right?
Right. It's like a historical detective story, only with, like, much higher stakes.
And don't forget about the impact this discovery had on, like, the public imagination.
Oh, yeah.
Just imagine reading about those explorers resorting to cannibalism in a desperate fight for survival.
It's both terrifying and fascinating.
I know, it's like out of a Gothic novel or something. Only this was tragically real.
Exactly. The story captured the world's attention.
Yeah.
It fueled this fascination with, like, Arctic exploration and the extremes of human endurance.
It speaks to that fascination we have with, like, both the courage and the fragility of the human spirit,
Right.
when faced with unimaginable challenges.
Yeah. But while the world was glued to the Franklin saga, life in New York City kept moving at its own pace.
Right.
You sent us an article about a meeting of the Board of Aldermen.
Okay, so like the nitty-gritty of city life.
Right, exactly.
Right.
They were tackling everyday concerns like street cleaning,
Okay.
garbage removal, the stuff that keeps a city functioning,
Yeah.
even amidst major events, you know?
Yeah, it's easy to overlook those details,
Uh-huh.
but it's a reminder that someone has to keep the wheels turning no matter what else is happening.
And sometimes those wheels need a bit of grease, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you also included this article about a disagreement between the city council and the board of aldermen
Oh, no.
over appointing a new city physician.
Good old-fashioned political squabbles. Some things never change, do they?
It does seem that way. But on a serious note, this little dispute, it reminds us of the importance of checks and balances in government,
Right.
even way back then.
So they were already wrestling with, like, the complexities of shared power and competing interests back in 1854.
Absolutely. But while the city fathers were debating healthcare, a different kind of drama was unfolding on the high seas.
You're talking about that abused cabin boy again.
Yeah, the one whose captain treated him so horrifically.
Yeah.
It's just a heartbreaking reminder of the power dynamics on those ships and how easily that power could be abused, especially, when
Right.
you consider there was very little oversight or protection for those in like vulnerable positions.
Yeah, it makes you think about how even as society strives for progress, there are always individuals who will exploit their power for their own gain.
It's true, and it highlights the importance of, constantly questioning authority and advocating for those who are marginalized or voiceless.
Okay, it feels like we've covered so much ground already,
I know, right?
but it sounds like 1854 still has more to reveal.
Oh, definitely. Remember that scathing critique of American seamen?
Yeah.
Well, there's more to that story than we initially thought.
Really?
You included another article from a ship captain who actually defends the character of American sailors.
Seriously? A ship captain sticking up for his crew?
That's kind of surprising.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
He basically argues that sailors, they're often unfairly judged and stereotyped.
So he's like pushing back against that whole, drunken, brawling sailor image.
Exactly. He describes, most sailors as hardworking,
Okay.
courageous, and dedicated to their duty.
So now we have one letter writer condemning American seamen and another one praising them.
Right.
It's like two sides of the same coin.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's our job to figure out, what the reality was.
Yeah.
Maybe the truth lies somewhere in between those extremes.
Right. It's a good reminder that history is rarely, black and white.
There are always multiple perspectives to consider.
Absolutely. And that's what makes these deep dives so rewarding, We're not just like learning facts. We're piecing together a more complete and nuanced understanding of the past.
So, where do we go from here? What other clues do we have about the lives of these 19th century sailors?
Well, you also provided some firsthand accounts from sailors themselves describing their experiences at sea.
Yeah.
Some are positive, some are negative, but they all offer like these valuable insights into the realities of life on board a ship.
It's like those sailors are speaking to us directly across the centuries.
I know, it really is.
And their stories, they go beyond like just anecdotes and stuff, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
They provide specific details about working conditions,
Right.
pay, discipline, even like the social dynamics on board.
Right.
So we can use this information to create a more accurate and multifaceted picture of what it was like to be a sailor back then.
Exactly. And what's striking about these accounts?
Right.
They really highlight the profound bond that existed between sailors.
Okay, what do you mean?
I mean, despite all the hardships that they faced,
Yeah.
they formed close friendships.
Well,
They looked out for each other.
Okay.
They shared a common purpose. They faced the same dangers, and they relied on each other for survival,
It's like a brotherhood forged in the crucible of the sea.
Precisely. And this bond, it went beyond nationality or cultural background, sailors from all corners of the world.
Wow.
They found common ground in their shared profession and the challenges they faced.
It's a powerful reminder that even in a world that's often divided by, borders and beliefs and stuff, there are still these shared human experiences that connect us all.
Right.
Okay, before we wrap things up, I can't stop thinking about Madame Pfeiffer.
Oh, yeah.
That woman was incredible.
She was amazing.
Her journey is a testament to, like, the power of human curiosity and the courage to, like, break free from societal expectations.
Right.
Remember, this was a time when women were expected to just stay home and focus on domestic life.
Yeah.
But here she is, trekking through jungles, climbing volcanoes, and fearlessly facing down cannibals.
She was a true trailblazer. I mean, defying the norms of her time.
Totally.
And she wasn't just driven by adventure,
Yeah.
She was a keen observer and a scientist at heart. Her meticulous notes and the specimens she collected, they really helped expand our understanding of the world.
It's inspiring to think about, her impact,
Yeah.
both on the scientific community and on the way we view women's roles in society.
Absolutely. She challenged the status quo and proved that women are capable of achieving, incredible things.
And her story is just one thread in this rich tapestry we've been exploring, right?
Yeah.
We've covered so much ground.
Yeah.
Shipwrecks, political upheavals, a maritime industry grappling with its own demons, the everyday lives of New Yorkers, and a nation on the brink of a civil war.
It's a lot.
It's almost overwhelming to think about.
It is a lot to process, but I think that's the beauty of it,
Yeah.
By delving into these seemingly disparate events and stories, we're able to piece together a more complete and nuanced understanding of a particular moment in time.
And that's what makes history so fascinating.
Right.
It's not just about, memorizing dates and facts.
No.
It's about connecting with the human stories behind those events and recognizing, the echoes of the past in our own lives.
Exactly. And in the case of 1854, I mean, it's a year marked by both progress and turmoil, by incredible feats of exploration and the persistence of social injustices.
It's a reminder that history is rarely neat and tidy.
No, it's not.
It's messy, complex, and full of contradictions. And that complexity is something we need to embrace, It's through exploring those contradictions, those multiple perspectives that we can truly learn from the past.
So, to our listeners, as you go about your day, think about the echoes of 1854 that you encounter. Maybe it's a news story about political division or an act of courage that reminds you of, Madame Pfeiffer.
Right.
The past is never truly past,
Yeah.
It shapes who we are in the world we live in.
And who knows? Maybe someday someone will be digging through, archives from our own time, trying to make sense of it all.
Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.
I like that.
There's always another layer to uncover, another story